Industrial design is dying. We live in a world of fast fashion, cheap knockoffs, and boring design. There are some outliers in the crowd, but we haven't seen much since the era of Frog Design, Dieter Ram, Jonnie Ives, Charles and Ray Eames, just to name a few. A lot of the products we have now are not necessarily bad, but they are kinda pretty boring. Well, until you look into the music hardware industry and see this. It reminds you of a calculator, not a music tool, so you check out the rest of the products and you notice something. This company prioritizes design when traditionally these devices are more utilitarian. This is teenage engineering, and they do things in the music world that no one else is even trying to do. In fact, I think the last company that prioritized design this much was Apple with Jonnie Ives and Steve Jobs. And if you think they're just in the music world, you'd be wrong. They worked with IKEA, Capcom, and Nothing on product collaborations for years. They've held talks, been on podcasts, and have a following online of lovers and haters. So why are they not that well known? How come they haven't turned into a household name? It might be because they don't really market themselves, or the collaborations they do designs for aren't what I would call mass market. But you can't deny teenage engineering is doing something different, and not for the sake of being different. They're using design principles to create products that are functional, unique, and beautiful, but are they hiding something else? Are they what they seem to be? Let's get into it. Hey, before we get into it, I just wanted to shout out my other channel, Ranking of Racers, where I'm trying to review every racing game that has ever come out and put them in a tier list of best to worst. The first episode is up, and I'd really like it if you check it out and let me know what you think, but back to the show. Founded in 2005 by a small group of individuals who were all game developers and ran a website in the 90s called NetBaby World, which was one of the first browser-based social gaming sites. While the site is still up, the games use Macromedia Shockwave to run, and since that has been dead since 2020, a lot of the games are kind of lost to time. However, you can still play a PS1 game that's rooted in that team, Cooler World. But while they had that going for them, game development just really wasn't in their cards. Listening to a talk from the founder, CEO, and head of design at Teenage Engineering, he spoke about the constrictive nature of the advertising industry. He wanted to sell creativity, and while they had NetBaby World and Cooler World, he wanted to do more. So he learned how to use a CNC machine and started building models in his garage. This space became a think tank, an incubator of ideas for himself and his friends to design in. He came to a crossroads on what he wanted to design and develop, which would have been a clock radio or a synthesizer, with him obviously picking the later to become the OP1. Now, they didn't have a lot of money at the time, but they did know how to design, how to engineer. They all took gig work from various companies to build capital and create their device. Then at the 2010 NAMM show, they showed off the final product.
To me, RIP buried.
Which, while they didn't know at the time, would become their iconic Halo product, winning multiple awards, and even showcased at the MoMA. It was unlike anything we've ever seen before, a product designed with aesthetic look in mind, but also functionality. It had everything you needed for music production. It was its own ecosystem, but could be paired with other devices on the fly. They even designed it to work with Lego and Lego Mindstorm. And priced at $800, it didn't seem to be that expensive compared to similar devices, but those other devices didn't have the look or character of the OP1. The OP1 was portable, it had a built-in battery, a screen. Not only was it a synth, it had a drum machine and recorded internally. It contained 12 different sound engines. It was built to be portable and an all-in-one machine. But it was also cool. The industrial design was cool, the GUI was cool, it was retro cool. It hit all the boxes to be an iconic design and iconic device. Jasper said when he was 15, his brother worked in a music store, so he borrowed instruments, and those instruments became the basis of the OP1. It was multiple devices in one. So how well did it do? It hit instantly with the community, and you started seeing YouTubers pop up with just the device in frame. Musicians showing off their demos, and tech YouTubers were comparing them to legendary industrial designers and even the Bauhaus movement. This was pretty insane for just a synth, but don't think they just rode that wave and didn't have the next product in their back pocket. The OD11, a revised modern take on the original speaker from Stig Carlson, won the London Design Award Gold. Named after the original OD11 from 1974, it's almost a carbon copy of that device, just with all the technology stuffed into it like Bluetooth and Wi-Fi. While not of their own design, it showed that Teenage Engineering respected the music community, respected design, and that they were just getting started. Quickly after the OD11, the Pocket Operator was released, called the PO10, which was a series of synthesizers released in 2015 and included 3 models, the PO12, 14, and 16. One of their cheaper devices at just under $60 to $100, they departed from the company's clean and timeless design to a more cyberpunk-inspired look with exposed PCBs, micro switches, and an LCD screen, reminiscent of the calculators of the 80s. These were followed by the PO20 and 30 series in 2016 and 2017. They were specifically designed to keep the cost down. Users could 3D print cases, and they were designed to work with the other devices as companion pieces. It was more than just a music device, it was a canvas for artists. It was a starting point for industrial designers, but even with its stripped down look, it was still designed well. The PCB was black, not just that standard green color. Traces, text, and a few buttons they did have were color coordinated, and even the little display holder was a nice touch that didn't have to be there but added to the aesthetic of the device. They even used replaceable batteries instead of a built-in lithium ion, so it would be easier to replace. This really was built for the user to experiment with, and I really love it. I love that design, I love that you can play with it. And listen, I do not make music in any way, but I still want this thing just to tinker with it. But as odd as this thing is, it's not their weirdest. In 2018, they collaborated with a pretty popular furniture outlet that you may have heard of. To release their very quirky Frexven, which was a new line of audio equipment. I think so anyway. You just have to see it. I mean, it even came with a coat and pillow cover for some reason. It did come with a speaker, but the whole idea was you can build this thing any way you wanted. It was more of an experience or an interactive piece of technology, almost a toy or a gimmick, a centerpiece for your home that just so happened to have a speaker. Now this came with a lot of pieces. I can't find the actual price of everything, but on IKEA the Spotlight is still listed at $42, so you can kind of gauge it from there. And while it seems the accessories were very limited, it also allowed you to use 3D printed files to accessorize it. Obviously, I don't think this works since it never received more modules from the initial release, although people seem to think it's worth a lot on eBay. It does follow Teenage Engineering's philosophy of using the items the way you want to use them. No restrictions, no right or wrong, just be creative. Which I think is a great way of looking at all their products. There's no wrong way to use them, and if you're just getting into music, they kind of nurture that creative spirit, and I see why a lot of people like them. There are a lot of companies out there that make creative tools that are either too hard for the novice to start with, or they create GIMP light versions of their Pro Tools which are severely limiting. Teenage Engineering figured out how to do it for both. Their second collaboration was with Panic and brought the Playdate, a handheld video game console with a crank. And like all Teenage Engineering designs, it's very unique, very interactive, very playful. It's unlike any other handheld device on the market today, with maybe the exception of Analog Pocket, but unlike the Analog Pocket, this has a creativity to it, a personality to it. Its design is part of the gameplay. The thing I love about Teenage Engineering is they can design something to be minimalist, retro-futuristic, and quirky while still looking beautiful. And they know when to stop. They could have gone farther with this design, but someone at Teenage Engineering knew, okay, this is the design. It can't get any better than this, ship it. And you know what? That takes a lot of discipline to do that. A lot of things can be overly designed, overly engineered. I mean, look at the product design of ANEO, which, by the way, has a website that looks very similar to Teenage Engineering's own website, but the devices are uninspiring. Some designs seem overly designed, like the AMO2 or Pocket DMG. Like, do we really need an analog stick and trackpad on a device mimicking the DMG? But looking at all their products, the company isn't unified. Their design language is non-existent. It's whatever the original product is they want to mimic, and if there is no original product, they just go wild with it. Without the name, you couldn't just say, oh, this is an A&EO product. But with Teenage Engineering, you know you're looking at a Teenage Engineering product. So after that, in 2021, they then partnered with Nothing to design the Ear One, which are active noise cancellation earbuds for Nothing's line of phone. Now, Nothing has already made a name for themselves and was known in the mobile tech world as a fresh look into mobile manufacturing and design. So when they partnered with Teenage Engineering, a lot of people who followed that scene were really interested about this collaboration. And you might be thinking, how do you redesign earbuds? Clear plastic, baby. But for real. They look like Apple earbuds, but with some interesting design to them. Very retrofuturism, very clean. They use the circuitry as part of the design. These are small devices with small components. The earbuds needed to be clean. That means wiring needed to be hidden, glue needed to not be messy, the text needed to fall on areas that could be legible. The plastic needed to be very clear, otherwise we would have gotten the repeat debacle of the 8-bit SN30 transparent controllers. Yeah, I bet you forgot about those monstrosities. And most recently, they've worked with Rabbit Inc. with the now infamous Rabbit R1, an AI device that maybe isn't a true AI companion device, or is. You should really read up on that journey. Either way, this thing looks like it belongs with the Playdate. The IKEA speaker, even the OP1. It's fun, it's inviting, it has interactive elements not seen on most devices. Again, this is unique. This is clearly a Teenage Engineering product. So, lining up a few of their products I just spoke about with mass-produced counterparts, you can see Teenage Engineering was able to create some unique devices that are unlike the sea of monotone devices we have today. And I've seen a lot of tech YouTubers complain that devices aren't fun anymore, they don't have unique design, but they don't have an answer to what they want, which fair enough, they're not designers. But Teenage Engineering are, and I think that's why a lot of people like them. They are bringing uniqueness to a bland world. But again, why don't you know who they are? It seems a lot of news outlets don't actually talk about who the designer is just about the device, but also these devices are very unique in themselves. They're built for a niche market. Most things Teenage Engineering touch aren't mainstream, and maybe that's because the mainstream isn't ready for Teenage Engineering. And it seems like they're okay with that. They don't seem like a company that wants to be tied down to rules, to design standards, to mass production. I've watched a lot of interviews with them, and they seem a little stressed when talking to people about themselves. They seem like a company that just wants to create tools that they would use, but also with industrial design, aesthetic design in mind. I mean, to me, it seems like they're still doing that gig work, that freelance work to create music tools for themselves that they just so happen to sell. They're creating products based on feelings, and from those products, they learn from experience what worked, what didn't, what they should do next time, and they integrate that into their new products. You can see that with the OP1 Feel. They try to improve on the technical and features portion of the device, the screen, the knobs, the technology. They are continually evolving and thinking of new products to kind of shake up the music and product world. Now, they've designed, engineered, and sold many other devices that I haven't talked about, and this is where they start to get some criticism. The Computer One wasn't received well with the case enthusiast. While the TX6 seemed to be liked, there is a lot of criticism about the size and cost of the device. The TP7 is unlike any field recorder anyone has ever seen, but the cost is astronomical. The table, the tape, the dispensers, you see those prices? No, just no. And I think that's where a lot of people are divided, the price. And yeah, they're not wrong. Their products are expensive and maybe not worth that price. They've said in interviews they don't really look at the price point when they're designing a product. They don't give themselves limits, but I also don't think they care about selling that much, or at least to the general public. I think selling their products is an afterthought, or maybe they design certain items more as a portfolio piece to show other companies, look what we can make without restrictions. I don't know how much profit there is in selling music hardware, especially when you have companies like Roland pushing things out left and right. I mean, are Teenage Engineering's products enough to sustain them, or is the B2B thing their real moneymaker? I've worked for design firms before and know a few people who have worked for some pretty big design firms, and the one thing I know is that they have that one client. They may have 5 or 10 clients, but they have that one client that pays all their bills, the big client. And I think Teenage Engineering is looking for that one client. It might be nothing, or maybe they haven't found it yet. But in my opinion, the B2B side pays the bills and the direct sell to consumers is kind of a bonus. The head of mechanical engineering at Teenage Engineering said he created a platform where life could be more interesting or inspiring. He collaborated with a lot of people internally and externally. He said if you have an idea, you should be able to explore that without any limitations. You learn with your hands. For example, they would make multiple prototypes of a product and just throw them around the office to see how people use them. Concept design, refine, and then deliver. And I think that's why a lot of people who review their products, even critics, usually like their products, because it's designed by music lovers, tested by music creatives for the music community. These aren't throwaway devices, these aren't afterthoughts. So after all this, who is Teenage Engineering? They're music lovers who are engineers and designers. Their devices don't fully have a set goal, instead they're truly creative devices. They try to design their devices without distractions, without limits. If you want to use it a certain way, use it the way you want to use it. There's no set right way to use their devices. I do think Teenage Engineering, the individuals behind it, do amazing things. They take the mediocre, the boring, and bring fun back to it. A fun we haven't seen in a long time. You can love what they do, you can hate what they do, but ultimately, I do think they care about music tools and how they not only function, but also look. They don't design by committee, they design by passion and experience. But let me know what you think in the comments. Do you own a Teenage Engineering device? What do you like? What don't you like? Let me know, and until next time, I'll see you guys later.
Coming for your ransom. Now I call you lawyer. Maga, can't do nothing for ya. Dead to me, R.I.P. buried. 무리들이 몰려온다 사자해라 미리. Dead to me, R.I.P. buried. 무릎 꿇고 고개 숙여 반성해라 피리.